The Exodus vanguard cut through the dark void of space, a massive, imposing silhouette against the starry canvas. Commander Kale Rayner stood on the bridge, his hands clasped behind his back as he gazed at the distant alien station. The Deneb system, a place on the fringe of known space, was both an opportunity and a threat. Humanity's presence here had caused ripples in a galaxy that preferred its old hierarchies and territorial boundaries. But Kale didn't care for these nuances. His mission was simple: establish a foothold for humans in this unexplored part of the galaxy. "We're approaching the station, Commander," said Lieutenant Ori, her voice calm, betraying no emotion. She stood beside Kale, her posture stiff but confident. The crew trusted her to handle the technical side of things, leaving Kale to do what he did best. Kale nodded. "Good. Prepare for the welcome party." The station loomed ahead, a marvel of alien engineering. It was surrounded by a haze of trade ships and military vessels, a bustling, ever-moving port. Kale had been to many places in his time, but this one felt different. The air was thick with suspicion, tension almost palpable. "Captain," Kale said, turning to the officer stationed at the helm, "maintain speed. Let's make an impression." The captain gave a brief nod, and the ship's engines hummed louder, the Exodus vanguard edging closer to the docking bay. "We're expecting a diplomatic meeting, sir," Lieutenant Ori reminded him, her voice edged with mild concern. "The Federation wants to ensure we stay on good terms with them." Kale turned to face her, a slight smirk playing on his lips. "I didn't get to the top by playing nice." The ship docked with a soft thud, and the crews sprang into action. Kale's crew, humans and aliens alike, moved quickly, preparing for the meeting. The air was filled with muted chatter, a mixture of nervous anticipation and excitement. But the crew knew what was at stake. Their very presence here could tip the balance of power in this part of the galaxy. "Do we have confirmation from the other delegations?" Kale asked, his voice low and steady. "Affirmative, Commander," Ori replied. "The Xerians, the Taloxians, and the Avlanians have all agreed to attend. There's no sign of the Till yet." Kale's eyes narrowed at the mention of the Tills, the alien race that dominated the system. Their admiral, Zyrex Till, was notorious for his ruthlessness, and his people were as proud as they were dangerous. Humanity's arrival had unsettled them, and Kale knew they'd be watching his every move. "Let's keep it that way," Kale said, walking toward the airlock. "This isn't just about diplomacy. We're making a statement." As the doors slid open, a burst of alien voices greeted them, their languages garbled in the atmosphere. The welcoming committee was already assembled, various leaders and representatives from the factions within the system. And then there was Zyrex, standing at the center of the group, his cold eyes fixed on Kale as if he could already see through him. The moment Kale stepped onto the station, a voice crackled through the intercom. "Fire on deck. All personnel report to their stations." For a brief, heart-stopping moment, every head turned toward the ceiling, scanning for any signs of smoke or flames. But Kale remained unfazed, his expression unchanged. The alien delegation whispered among themselves, clearly on edge. "Nothing to worry about," Kale said, his voice cutting through the tension. "It's just the human way of making an entrance." He strode forward, his boots clicking against the metal floor, confident and steady. The other aliens, caught between confusion and disbelief, watched him in silence as he crossed the threshold into the gathering. "Commander Rayner," Zyrex greeted him, his voice a low growl. "I wasn't expecting you to bring fire with you." Kale's smile was thin, almost sarcastic. "I thought I'd make things a little more memorable." The Avlanian representative raised a brow, his lips curling into a tight smile. "Memorable indeed." Zyrex didn't return the smile. His cold, reptilian eyes stayed locked on Kale. "I see you've chosen to make an entrance by disrupting protocol. How typical of your species." Kale met his gaze unwaveringly. "You've got the wrong impression of us. We're not here to disrupt, Admiral. We're here to ensure peace. But if you're asking for a confrontation, I'm sure we can arrange that too." The tension in the room was thick, the air growing heavier as the words between them grew sharper. It was a game of words, each side testing the other's resolve, but neither willing to break just yet. A sudden clatter from the far side of the room broke the standoff, as one of the alien delegates, a Xerian, knocked over a stack of data pads in his haste. The tension dissipated for a moment, with everyone's attention turning to the flustered Xerian. Kale seized the opportunity, his voice cutting through the quiet. "We don't have time for games. Humanity is a force to be reckoned with, Admiral. You can either accept that or keep trying to push us back. Your choice." Xyrex's gaze darkened, his fists tightening at his sides. "Don't mistake our patience for weakness, human." Kale's eyes never wavered. "Don't mistake our strength for recklessness." With a dismissive gesture, Xyrex turned to his fellow delegates. "Let's begin." But the tension was still there, hanging like a storm cloud over the room. Kale knew it was only a matter of time before things escalated. The fire he'd started wasn't just about a dramatic entrance, it was a signal, a reminder that humanity wouldn't be intimidated by threats or power plays. As the meeting began, Kale sat with his crew, his eyes scanning the alien faces around him. This wasn't just a diplomatic mission. It was a challenge to everything these species thought they knew about humanity. And Kale Rayner, for better or worse, was the one who would prove it. The chapter ends with a palpable sense of looming danger, as Kale braces himself for what's to come. The real battle wasn't over yet, it had only just begun. The tension in the room was suffocating. Kale Rayner sat at the far end of the long, oval table, his hands folded neatly in front of him. Xyrex still sat across from him, his cold, reptilian eyes never leaving the human commander. Around the table, the representatives of the Deneb system's major factions watched the exchange with a mixture of intrigue and unease. Kale's mind was razor-sharp, analyzing every movement, every glance. This wasn't just a diplomatic meeting, it was a battle for dominance, a test of will. Kale knew that his presence here was a challenge to the status quo. Xyrex had made that clear, and the Admiral's simmering hostility was only adding fuel to the fire. "Shall we begin?" Xyrex's voice was smooth, but there was an edge to it, a layer of mockery just beneath the surface. "By all means," Kale replied, leaning forward slightly. He kept his voice even, controlled, betraying nothing of the tension inside him. "I believe we're here to discuss the future of humanity's role in the Deneb system." Xyrex gave a sharp nod, his hands resting on the table in front of him. "Indeed. And before we proceed, I must make one thing clear: the Deneb system belongs to us, the Till. Any interference by your species will not be tolerated. You may have your reputation, but we will not bend to your presence." Kale's gaze didn't flicker. "I wasn't aware you were in the business of making threats, Admiral. We're here to establish a mutually beneficial relationship, not to challenge your control. But if you think humanity can be pushed aside that easily—" He trailed off, letting the words hang in the air. Xyrex's eyes narrowed, his lips curling into a thin, cruel smile. "You underestimate us, Commander. And that will be your downfall. You humans have a tendency to overestimate your strength. I'm not here to prove our strength to you, Admiral. I'm here to show you that we belong in this galaxy. That we can, and will, be a force that cannot be ignored." There was a brief silence as the two locked eyes, each weighing the other's words, each assessing the other's resolve. The other delegates, sensing the rising tension, shifted uncomfortably in their seats. This wasn't the polite diplomacy they had expected. This was a battle of wills. Finally, the Talaxian representative, a tall, skeletal being with pale blue skin, spoke up, his voice a rasping whisper. "We are here to discuss terms, not to engage in rhetoric. The human presence in this system is new, and it must be handled delicately. I suggest we move forward with caution." Kale glanced at the Talaxian, then at Xyrex. "Caution is fine, but make no mistake, humanity is here to stay. We didn't come to negotiate from a position of weakness." Xyrex's gaze flicked to the Talaxian, then back to Kale, his jaw tightening. "You speak as if you've already won, Commander. But there's more at play here than simple bravado. Is there?" Kale replied, his voice calm, but with a subtle undertone of challenge. Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you're the one who's afraid. Afraid that we'll prove you wrong. The words hit their mark. Xyrex's composure faltered for the briefest moment. His eyes flashed with something that could almost be interpreted as fear. It was a fleeting moment, but it was there. And Kale didn't miss it. Enough. Xyrex hissed, slamming his fist on the table. You'll regret your insolence, human. Kale stood up slowly, the rest of the room watching in tense silence. If you're so sure of yourself, Admiral, then why don't we take this outside? I'm sure a real test of strength will settle things. The room erupted into chaos. The delegates shouted at the two commanders, some urging them to calm down, others watching with bated breath. The Avlanian representative, a short but muscular species with silver fur, stood up and slammed his palm on the table. This is not the time for displays of power. We're here to discuss the future, not to start a war. Kale's gaze flicked toward the Avlanian. If Xyrex is so eager to test humanity's strength, I'm happy to oblige. But if diplomacy is still an option, then we can finish this talk without any bloodshed. Xyrex's eyes bore into Kale's, the animosity between them palpable. You mistake my patience for weakness. But let me make this clear, if you think your human strength can intimidate us, you are gravely mistaken. Kale's expression hardened. I don't need to intimidate you. I only need to prove that humanity is more than capable of standing up to your kind. If you're so unwilling to see that, then perhaps you're the one who's afraid. With that, the room fell silent again. The atmosphere was thick with tension, and it was clear that diplomacy had all but evaporated. The moment had passed. The human presence was no longer just a diplomatic issue, it had become a power struggle. Xyrex broke the silence. I will not back down, Commander. You may have your reputation, but it will be tested, just as your species will be tested. Then test away. Kale replied, his voice cold and resolute. You'll find that humanity doesn't break easily. The delegates exchanged nervous glances. The situation had reached a boiling point. Kale's boldness had struck a nerve, and Xyrex's pride had been bruised. But there was more at play here than just words. Both commanders understood that their actions would have repercussions that would echo through the galaxy. Xyrex stood slowly, his body language stiff with barely contained rage. This isn't over, Commander. Not by a long shot. Kale remained seated, unfazed. It never is. As the delegates filed out of the room, the air still heavy with tension, Kale remained in his seat. His mind raced through the events, the words exchanged. This was far from over. The challenge had been laid down, and now it was only a matter of time before the first strike was made. Kale knew it wouldn't be long before the till came for him, and when they did, they would be in for a surprise. He stood up, his expression hardening with determination. The game had begun. And Kale Rayner was ready to play. The hum of the Exodus Vanguard's engines vibrated through the deck beneath Kale Rayner's boots as he stood on the bridge, staring out into the endless void. The tension from the diplomatic meeting still lingered, like smoke from a fire that hadn't yet burned out. He knew it was only a matter of time before Xyrex would make his move. The Till Admiral had lost face in front of the delegation, and that was something a being like him would not tolerate. Kale couldn't help but feel that something was coming, and that something would change the course of their mission. Commander! Lieutenant Ori's voice broke through his thoughts, sharp and focused. There's an incoming transmission from Admiral Xyrex. He's demanding immediate confrontation. Kale's jaw tightened. He had expected it, but that didn't make it any less frustrating. The message was clear, Xyrex wasn't interested in talking anymore. His patience had run out. Put him through, Kale ordered, turning away from the view screen. The bridge fell into a tense silence as Xyrex's image appeared on the main screen. His reptilian features glimmered with a cold, steely rage. The scars on his face seemed to gleam in the light of the holographic display, a visual testament to his history of brutal warfare. He stared at Kale, his expression a mix of contempt and challenge. I gave you a chance, Commander, Xyrex said, his voice low and threatening. But now you've overstepped. You've insulted my authority. You've defied the Till. And now you will pay for it. Kale didn't flinch. If you're looking for a fight, Admiral, I'm happy to oblige. But don't mistake this for weakness. Humanity's not going anywhere. Xyrex's gaze flickered to the side, and a slight smile curled on his lips, a smile that didn't reach his eyes. I'm not asking for your consent, human. You'll learn soon enough that your kind's recklessness will cost you. The transmission cut off abruptly, leaving Kale standing in silence, the weight of the moment pressing down on him. He could feel it, something was coming. The Exodus vanguard was no longer in neutral territory. Xyrex had made it personal. Captain, Kale said, turning to the helm officer. Prepare for battle. They're coming. Aye, Commander. The captain responded, his hands already moving to execute the orders. As Kale moved to the tactical station, his mind raced. This wasn't just about diplomacy anymore. This was a confrontation waiting to unfold, one where humanity's very presence in the galaxy would be tested by fire. Kale couldn't afford to be cautious. He had to push forward, force the issue before Xyrex's forces overpowered them. Lieutenant Ori, scan for incoming ships, Kale said, his voice calm but commanding. I want the moment we detect them. We're not going to be caught off guard. Aye, Commander, Ori replied, her fingers dancing over the controls. We've got multiple ships heading our way. Their signature is unmistakable, Till warships. Kale's lips tightened. How long until they arrive? 5 minutes, Ori said, her tone grim. Kale nodded. It wasn't much time. But he'd be damned if he let Xyrex think he could push humanity around. Not on his watch. Get me a direct line to the crew, Kale ordered. The speaker crackled as his voice filled the ship. All hands, this is Commander Rayner. We're facing immediate threats from Till forces. Prepare for combat. You all know your stations, and you know what's at stake. We will not bend. We will not break. Stand firm. Humanity stands together. Now let's show them what we're made of. He waited for a brief moment as the announcement finished, then turned back to the bridge crew. The look on their faces was one of resolve. Kale didn't need to say more. They were ready. Captain, Kale said, his voice cold as steel. Bring us to full combat readiness. Ori, give me a tactical analysis. I want to know where their weak points are. Understood, Ori replied, her fingers flying over the console. We're outmatched in firepower, but their ship's engines are heavily reliant on their energy core. If we target that, we can disable them without destroying the whole fleet. But it's a narrow window. We need precision. Kale's eyes narrowed as he considered the options. He wasn't about to play by anyone else's rules. Target their engines. Disable them. We'll take them on, one ship at a time. Aye, Commander. Orders set, Ori confirmed, her voice steady despite the high stakes. Kale exhaled slowly, his gaze never leaving the view of the approaching Till ships. They were coming in fast. But Kale knew one thing, he wouldn't be intimidated. He'd been in worse situations, had faced impossible odds before. This was just another test, and humanity was built for them. The countdown began, and the tension in the room reached its peak. Kale's grip tightened around the console, his focus narrowing to a single point. He could hear the whine of the engines as the Exodus vanguard prepared for combat, the ship bracing itself for impact. 5 seconds to enemy range, Ori called out. All weapons systems are online. Kale glanced at the tactical readout. The Till ships were within range. They were seconds away from opening fire, but Kale was ready. No, he barked. Target their engines and fire. The Exodus vanguard roared to life, its cannons lighting up the dark void of space as they discharged a barrage of energy blasts. The first salvo hit the lead Till ship square in its engine core, sending a ripple of energy through the enemy fleet. Kale felt a surge of satisfaction as the ship staggered, its movements becoming erratic. But it wasn't over. The rest of the Till fleet was still coming, more ships lining up to take their shot. Captain, we need more time! Kale shouted. "We've got incoming," the captain replied, his voice tight with concentration. Another barrage from the enemy's ships erupted, and the Exodus vanguard shuddered under the impact. The shields held, but barely. Cale's heart raced, but he refused to give an inch. "Target their engines again," Cale ordered. "Keep them off balance." The Exodus vanguard's guns roared once more, another strike hitting the Till fleet. One by one, their ships began to falter. It wasn't enough to destroy them, but Cale didn't need total annihilation. He just needed to make them see that humanity wasn't to be underestimated. "Keep firing," Cale muttered, his eyes locked on the chaos unfolding before him. The Till fleet was faltering, their momentum slowed. Cale had done what he set out to do. He'd shown them the true strength of humanity. And in doing so, he'd sealed the beginning of a war that would change the galaxy forever. The Exodus vanguard limped away from the battle, the damage minimal but enough to send a message. The Till may have been the ones to start the confrontation, but Cale had ensured they wouldn't finish it. He knew the battle wasn't over. But this moment of defiance, would be the spark that ignited humanity's true place in the galaxy. And as the ships sailed into the void, Cale stood tall, ready for whatever would come next.